Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Battler Lounge. This is the first time we're coming virtually live to all our colleagues and friends around the Pacific, and something that we're looking forward to doing a lot more of into the future. As you know, we're often used to getting all together such as at the Poon meeting in 2016, when we get a chance to hang out together and not just learn things, but also spend time together getting to know each other, talking about issues and things that we have in common. Today, we're trying to do this virtually. This is the first time we've done this, and it's really exciting for us, if not a little bit nerve-wracking. But we're going to give it a go today. So this is the inaugural Pacific Battler Lounge. We really want to thank our sponsors that are allowing us to make this happen, which is the European Union under the PROTEG project, the Global Environment Facility, and New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Thanks, Bradley. Sometimes I might lose my words. So welcome. We're going to this session, the inaugural session, is going to be focused largely on the PRISMs. We've got technical leads for the PRISMs here as our guests in our lounge today. So that's really exciting. We're going to be talking a little bit about the programs, what issues and impacts there are, and also trying to deal with some of the issues that we all face as invasive species battlers, such as how do we communicate our message and lots of other things. So welcome. I'd like to introduce Joseph Pesce he may be to your right, he's to my left. He is the PRISM's associate.
Hello everyone. As Dave introduced, I'm Joseph Pesce. I've started working here as the Invasive Species PRISM's Associate since last July 2019, and I'm happy to join the team. And yeah, just looking forward to a lot of to connecting with the battlers from around the region, and also so I'm focusing more on the administrative, offering administrative support to the PRISMs. So feel free to email me or contact us, the team, whenever you have any, if you need any technical assistance that you need on field. Thank you.
Joseph, so we have an email address, so people can put requests into the PRISMs for technical advice, support, etc. How are battlers best?
Yes.
The best way they can do that.
Thanks, Dave. So we have an email address, which is prisms@sprep.org, or you can find you can visit our webpage. We've created a form there that you can fill up. So anytime that if you need any support from the PRISM's partners, you can there's details there that you can fill up, and we'll be able to facilitate something to meet what you're needing or where you need support. So yeah.
Fantastic. You can see Bella's shared the screen now. We also have a Battlers Facebook group, which has been going since 2016, since the Poon meeting. And that's also a really good place where you can chat, share stories. If you're on Facebook, please, you're welcome to join the group. It's a private group. So if you do send a request, please just put a little note in saying your real name if you have an alias on Facebook, and where you're from, and something about invasive species, so that we know that you really want to join the group, rather than accepting people that might potentially be spammers, I guess, aren't they, yep. Joseph? Yes. So that's something we have to do. We also have quite a few resources aside from things you may have heard about before. Joseph also looks after the Battler resource space. Would you like to
Yes.
tell us a bit more about that, Joseph?
So the Battler resource is all about sharing your case studies, what's been happening in your country. You can share it to us and we can put it up there. So it's sort of like a one-stop shop where you can find all the resources about invasive species management in the Pacific. So it's a convenient tool for you battlers to use whenever you're stuck somewhere. You can find all the resources there. We've recently added 4 new battler series, and that's focusing on 4 of the PRISM's programs. So those are really valuable tools that you can use to guide you with your work on the field. And also when you're doing a planning or designing a project and stuff like that. So it's a very convenient tool that is available to anyone and who's working in the field of invasive species management.
Yeah, so if you wanted to find the Battler series, as you can see there, the middle box Battler series, that'll take you straight to all the Battler series. The new Battler series we've just published all in relation to the new PRISM's programs. We already had one on predator-free Pacific, which was developed a few years ago. So we now also have ones on protecting our islands, managing weeds, restoration.
Natural enemies.
And natural enemies, natural solutions. How could I forget about that? So yes, please do check out the Battler resource space. We have a lot of things going on in the region. And as I said, the new Battler series relate to the PRISM's program. So I might just, before I introduce our PRISM's partners who are joining us today, I might just point out that we're not the only ones in the room. It may seem like that, but you've met Joseph. I'm David Mobley. If nobody knows me, I'm the Invasive Species Advisor at SPREP. I've been here for just over 8 years. I love life here in Samoa and working with the Pacific. We have Bradley Meyer here to my left or right, depending how the screen looks. He is the manager of the Jeff Six Regional Project and also the lead technical person for the War on Weeds program.
That's right. Thanks, Dave. Greetings, everyone.
In the room who you can't see, we have Dominic Sadler, who again, a lot of you will know. He is hidden behind the computer, and what he's doing is he's managing the questions that come in, and he's also setting up some polls, which we'll talk about in a minute. We also have Isabel Rash, who is the Jeff Six Invasive Species Coordinator, and she's sharing the slides with us and trying to make everything work technically with our IT assistant, Charlie. So we are more people in the room. Joseph, maybe you would like to tell us about the questions that we're posing this morning and the polls.
And the polls. So our first question, which will go live soon, if you can have just 2 seconds of your time to just click on the option that is appropriate to, that is applicable to your case. So the first question that we have is, what digital applications do you prefer for communication? And we have a number of options there that you can select from, or you can select as many as you want, depending on what you're using. And
that's an important question for us, isn't it?
Yeah,
Joseph, because we're often communicating with battlers out in the Pacific, in all the different countries, and some people prefer some options and some people prefer others.
yes.
So it's good to know what everyone's using out there so we can communicate a bit better with everybody.
So our next question will be, do invasive species impact men and women differently? So you can answer yes or no there. And the importance of this is that the gender inclusivity. So we're looking at how the different genders are impacted or affected by the by invasive species in the region. So it's something that we have to consider as well when we are designing projects or implementing projects, because people are affected differently. So it's good to involve everyone in a project implementation and things like that.
Very important.
And the other question that we have, these will be coming up live soon for your feedback. Do you have a formal health and safety policy and plan?
We're going to look at these questions with our guests throughout the next hour. But any sort of feedback you can give us, Joseph, is much appreciated. We also have some open questions which you can respond to on the question and answers section. Have we got those up now, Dominic? Whereabouts are we going to post those? In the Q&A section? Aside from the polls, we have the open-ended questions as well. Whereabouts are we posting those on the feed? Chat. Okay, so those we posted in the chat. Okay. So let's introduce our PRISM's partners that are here with us today. First of all, we have Lindley Hayes. Good morning, Lindley. I hope it's the morning here. It's the morning for us. I've known you for a very long time, almost my entire working career. You're someone who's worked tirelessly on. I would like to know if you could share with us what inspires you to do your job and what keeps you motivated about teaching people about natural enemies and natural solutions.
Thanks, Dave, and kia ora koutou, everyone. The things that inspire and motivate me, well, first of all, there is so much important work to do. We all know just how serious the invasive species issues are all over the world, and the Pacific is no exception. But also there are amazing and passionate people out there who are working very hard to try and make a difference. And often I get introduced to those people when they're quite desperate, when they've tried a lot of things and the weeds are continuing to just get worse and worse, and there doesn't seem to be any solution. And it's very rewarding to be able to offer a very safe and sustainable and successful solution to these weeds. I also have some amazing colleagues that I work with, a wonderful team here in New Zealand, but also people all around the world. The international weed biocontrol community is very tight and we help each other out. So I think the main motivation is really that we can achieve some wonderful results, and we work with really great, passionate people.
Outstanding. I can understand that. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. So just a reminder, Lindley Hayes is the technical lead for the PRISM's program, Natural Enemies and Natural Solutions. It focuses on managing the impacts of widespread weeds, which is over landscape scale. A very useful tool. Next on our guest list is Richard Griffiths from Island Conservation. He's one of our technical leads for the Predator-Free Pacific program. Richard, I know you have 2 young boys that I've actually met, and I know how important it is for every parent to introduce the right way of thinking to their kids, and so that they grow up with a good understanding of the world. And I know as invasive species practitioners or people who have to communicate about invasive species, it can be quite difficult because it's quite a difficult concept, and sometimes people get upset, you know, because it invariably always results in having to kill something, and a lot of people have trouble dealing with that, eh? So for someone like you who's been, relentless and so passionate about invasive species for a long time and has probably killed billions of rats, how do you communicate with the importance, and communicate the importance of invasive species to people who may be a little bit more vulnerable to those kinds of ideas? You've obviously talked about it with your kids over the years, and how do you go about getting them to understand why you do what you do?
Kia ora, Dave, and kia ora tātou, everyone. Good question. I think what I'm most passionate about is not killing things, nor invasive species, but the outcomes that can be generated from their removal. And I think, David, most people get the concept of invasive species as almost without exception, they have experienced some effects from a pest that has been introduced into their country. What can help is to explain some of the less well understood impacts, such as rats carrying diseases, leptospirosis, for example, or rats acting as a host for mosquitoes that spread diseases such as dengue. It does get more difficult when you're talking about animals that are kept as pets, such as cats. But when you explain or show people a video of the devastation a cat can do, such as wiping out an entire colony of seabirds, it helps get across the concept. Cats also spread toxoplasmosis, which can cause failed pregnancies and other health issues. And many people are not aware of that.
Great. So your boys understand invasive species now. How long do you think, at what age do you think they've managed to understand that concept? And obviously it would have been very difficult when they're very, very young, but what do you think is a good age, or an age where children can understand those types of concepts and adopt that approach?
You can't start too young, David. In New Zealand, it's pretty easy to see the impacts of invasive species. They're pretty much everywhere you look, whether it's snails eating your lettuces in the garden or rats eating the native birds. It's a constant battle. But my boys have got pretty excited about trapping rats and possums. And we're very lucky in New Zealand to still have places where invasive species such as rats and cats have never been or have subsequently been removed. And when you visit an island that has never had invasives, or has had them removed, it's like taking a trip into the past. And you can see and understand what Aotearoa used to be like. And I'd really encourage everyone in the Pacific to try and recreate places like that, because it gives us a glimpse into the world that shaped our present and our culture.
Yes, it's a very privileged position to be able to go to those places. In New Zealand, we have quite a few. We're certainly starting to generate some in the Pacific. Mount Talau is a good example of that, where a site has been managed. And there's also a lot of islands, such as Palmyra Island, and many islands which have had rats removed. I was wondering, Richard, during the session the other day, we introduced an image which explains really well the impacts of rats from right high in the watershed down to the reef. Do you think you'd be able to take us quickly a little bit through that image and give us some more idea about how widespread invasive rats are on ecosystems?
Yeah, rats are everywhere today, thanks to traveling around, and they've been introduced to more than 90% of the world's islands and have wreaked havoc wherever they've gone. But it's really, I mean, we all know that the ocean and the land is inextricably linked. And seabirds really bring that message home. They forage at sea, but when they need to return to land to breed. And on land they poop, and the nutrients in their guano, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, slowly gets filtered and washed back into the ocean, and there it increases phytoplankton abundance. And that increase allows corals to grow faster and store more energy and resist and recover from stresses, thermal stresses. But it doesn't stop there, because those seabird-derived nutrients also increase algal production, leading to higher fish biomass, especially the herbivorous fishes like parrotfish, that remove harmful algae and facilitate coral recovery after storm events or bleaching events. So we need to recover our seabird populations if we really want to revive our reefs fully.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's a lot of people probably are not aware of the far-reaching impacts of rats. There's been quite a lot of published papers now, and organisations such as Island Conservation and BirdLife are doing really well to promote this knowledge, but it's certainly not as widely understood as a lot of other concepts. So it's something we're really going to have to focus on. Another important part of invasive species management, in fact, the first line of defence is biosecurity, and we're really lucky today to have Monica Gruber with us. She's the PRISM's lead, along with SPC for Protect Our Islands. She's done a lot of great work in Tokelau, Kiribati. I would really like to know, Monica, you're very driven to assist the Pacific by managing ants and improving biosecurity. It's not everyone's cup of tea working in the Pacific, but you seem to have taken it like a dog to water, shall we say. What makes the Pacific so special to you, and why are ants so important that you put so much effort into trying to assist the Pacific countries?
Kia ora koutou, and thank you, Dave. I guess my story starts with when I first went to the Pacific for work about 10 years ago, and it was a visit to Tokelau. And my previous experience with the Pacific was very much as a tourist, and going to Tokelau was a real eye-opener in terms of how connected Pacific people are with their environment and how much they're affected by changes to the environment. And when I was in Tokelau, that was partly because they were experiencing some issues with yellow crazy ants, and they'd been asking for a lot of help. And because they're so remote, and because ants are very difficult to deal with, a number of other issues, that they were really struggling. So I felt, because I was studying ants at the time, that I could actually make a difference. And so I worked really hard to try and assist them, and work with them for a number of years to try and help the problems they were having with yellow crazy ants. But it was quite clear that people were really passionate and people could make changes in their environment, and they were really changes you could see the difference very quickly. So the sorts of problems that people were struggling with were the ants coming inside and crawling all over their babies. And because in the Pacific people have a very more outdoors lifestyle, more connection with the outdoors, it was really affecting everything they did. Ants were crawling over their fish when they brought the fish in, and they just couldn't escape them. So, I mean, a colleague of mine who travelled with me at the time, he made the comment that seeing what we were seeing and doing what we were doing was life-changing for us. And until that time, I had only thought of working in policy or research. And for me, I thought, well, this is a place where I can actually make a difference. a field I can make a difference in. And that's what really stimulated my passion and my enthusiasm for the Pacific. And that's one thing that's really difficult about this whole lockdown, I think, that we all feel, or this whole COVID-19 situation, is that we're stuck here in our offices or our home offices and really miss the interactions, the personal interactions with our colleagues in the Pacific and working on the ground to make a difference. So that's really what sort of drives me. And why ants? Well, I just happen to be working on them, but I think the key thing with ants is they're really hard to get rid of. And like I said, they can have all pervasive impacts when they do cause problems. There's only a few species that do, don't get me wrong, it's not all ants. And even those species, it's sometimes only at certain times. But, you know, the key thing is biosecurity, it's prevention. So that's really why I started getting involved in biosecurity and wanting to develop tools and increase knowledge so that we can prevent these these problems happening in the first place. So then we don't need to worry about the expensive eradications and killing things and all the problems that they cause.
Well, we're very thankful, Monica, that you decided to leave the books and writing papers alone and come out and do some practical work in the Pacific, because the benefits that I've seen in the countries that I've been to and we've been to together is fantastic. We're going to take a little bit of a break from our discussion at the moment, and we've got a really exciting thing to happen today. Today we're going to award the Pacific Battler of the Year Award for 2020. This is an award which we started in 2017. Lisa Whanua was the first recipient from Tonga for her work at Mount Te Lao, saving the Tongan whistler. And these awards are, you know, we're really lucky to have so many dedicated invasive species battlers in the Pacific. I can never say that enough. It's always really hard to work out who should be the Battler of the Year for a start, but it's really focused on those that work hard and achieve real outcomes for the benefits of their country, the community or territory or state, and the region. So all of those aspects coming together. We try and make the award to recognise these outstanding people and the contribution they make. So as I said, Lisa was the first award winner. In 2018, we had Tavita Tungaya, who has spent a long time, decades, battling Tamalingi in American Samoa, and the results were absolutely outstanding. He used all the modern technology to record and prove what he was doing, and also did a lot of restoration of the sites where they were managed. Last year we had Francis League, a true legend. He actually eradicated Imparator grass from Yap. Last year it was declared eradicated after well over a decade. I first started working with Francis in 2006, and he was managing Imparator grass before that. So he did a really great effort, and it's one of the few examples where an invasive weed has been eradicated from a country in the Pacific. You know, we're not looking for necessarily the most published person. In fact, that's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for people who make a difference on the ground, and that's what Pacific Invasive Species Battler of the Year is all about. So I've been really excited about today. And the main reason is that we get to reward one of the Pacific Battlers again. So we're going to play you a clip, and everyone's really excited. Here we go. So the surprise is out. Our 2020 Battler of the Year award goes to Hagid Tomatuli from Niue. We are going to try and call him now and see if we can get in touch with him.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. Hello, Hagid. Maybe just adjust the screen. It's too glary. See the phone screen? Just put it down. Put it down. How are you, buddy? Maybe someone just hold it there.
Congratulations, Hagid.
Yeah,
Oh, how good.
we're trying some new technology. There we go. Yeah, you can put them in front of me. That's good. Congratulations. Were you watching this session? I don't think he can hear us. Oh, great. How do you feel, mate? It's a fairly impressive video. So Hagid was awarded the award this year. People may think it was just about pig hunting, but no, it wasn't. The reason why Hagid was awarded the award this year was because of the full program of work that he has going on in Niue. He is not just doing pig management, he is also managing the high priority weeds. He's also been doing a lot of awareness. He's just about to embark on restoring 2 large areas of Huvalu forest in Niue. And he's doing a feasibility assessment to look at eradicating rats from all of Niue. So he is participating and got all the aspects of the PRISMS programs up and running in Niue. When I first met Hagid back in, I think it was 2012, Hagid had just come out of, not long out of university, where he did a Parks and Recreation degree, just like me, so it makes me extra proud. But you've just done an amazing effort, Hagid, not just in the work that you're doing, but in the way that you've promoted invasive species management in Niue, the way you've taken it wider in the Pacific through Coconut Wireless Facebook page, creating or assisting to create movies on hunting Aotearoa. You've really raised the bar for awareness. It would be great if you could maybe let everyone know how you managed to do that, and also still look after your baby daughter and your wife, and still manage to go fishing, catch big fish, and still hunt and gather on a daily basis. How do you manage all those things so well?
I guess it's to catch the other better. Not really job for something that I enjoy doing. So my life, especially the work basis.
So it's just one of many things that you love about your country and motivates you to do well for Niue.
Well, I guess young people they will straight up meet for service. I was in speaking with it. The need help my my country quite good, and this species been huge impact on it. Around feel like that I am looking to be not only the country.
That's great. And you're also at the moment doing some work trying to establish or get going an option for a natural enemy for taro vine, which is another huge project which Lindley is helping you with. Do you want to maybe have a quick say a few quick words about the impacts of taro vine on your island of Niue?
Yes, so taro vine right now is having issue of could have a lot of invasive weeds seem to well in the shade, but with like making and the forest over kill off the whole plant. They're having a hard control the spread of the top. What we're doing right now is they will bring in a team trying to do some research on how we can or find the so they can hopefully discuss the controlling the
Great.
but as we all know, they're very easy, and some being exposed, anywhere world, costs 4 weeks around from $1 million, and then this will be that small country doesn't have it.
Yeah, we're all wishing you very good luck with that, Huggett, along with your other activities. Once again, congratulations from us here. Great effort, and we really appreciate the work that you do and the example that you set for battlers around the Pacific. You have a great day, mate. You should go and celebrate. Next up, I would like to introduce, actually, I've already introduced Lindley Hayes, haven't I?
Yep, you have.
But I would like to ask her a further question in relation to Huggett. You know, I know that you won an award. We don't need any slides. Don't need any slides at the moment. Where's that one? Oh, yes. I remember you won the Peter Ingram Award from the New Zealand Biosecurity Institute a while ago. And now that Huggett has just received an award, what did winning an award which is evaluated by your peers, what did it mean to you at the time?
Thanks, Dave. First of all, congratulations to Huggard, and looking forward to working with him in Niue over the next few years and dealing with some of those weeds. I think peer recognition is always icing on the cake. It's a lovely thing to have, but the cake itself is probably even more important, and that is the meaningful work, the relationships and the friendships actually that we develop working with people over decades. And as Monica mentioned too, just getting to go to some amazing places and do some things that you would never do as a tourist, and being able to make a difference, to know that you have a job where you're not only making a difference to the environment, but to people's livelihoods and well-being. That's the cake, that the awards are a nice piece of icing to have on the top.
That is so true, Lindley. Words of wisdom. We're going to jump to Brad now, because we haven't spent much time with Brad, but in all of these types of all of these activities, you know, there's always risks, and you know, there's risks to people, risks to the environment, because most of the time we're doing something and we need specific tools. For PRISMS, we have a health and safety plan. Brad, would you like to maybe talk about what we've set up for some of our country coordinators to help them with health and safety?
Sure, thanks, Dave. Well, in the field of invasive species, a lot of our work happens in remote environments, and quite often necessitates the use of hazardous substances. So health and safety is really important. We all want to go home at the end of the day safe and sound. And the PRISMS has adopted a process called ThinkSafe from New Zealand, which has really simplified a set of processes. It's all about identifying hazards together, and then having a think about how to remedy or mitigate those hazards. And that flows through to using personal protective equipment that's appropriate for what you're doing. There's a lot of really neat data collection tools, mobile tools that can be used to support the ThinkSafe system. And that makes it really easy to use for everyone. It also makes it really easy to aggregate the data that's collected, so we can analyze it and see just how often certain hazards are being encountered, and we can put a bit more effort into supporting the management of those hazards through that analysis. So ThinkSafe is a really smart set of tools that we've made available through the GEF6 project to the countries involved with that, but it's available to anyone in the Pacific, actually.
Great. As I said, a lot of our activities involve a little bit of risk, but it's all managed. That's why we have technical experts. Lindley, would you like to maybe quickly talk about the process which makes the use of natural enemies safe for countries?
Sure. It basically boils down to, we have 100 years of experience in international best practice. And if we follow that very carefully, we can select and release natural enemies which will not have harmful impacts. And unfortunately, people often think about some of the things that were done in the past that were not wise, that did not involve specialist natural enemies. Things like cane toads, mongoose, minor birds, giant African snails, all those baddies. And I want to reassure that the work we're doing with weeds is nothing like that. We are only working with specialist natural enemies that will not attack anything other than the weed and not have harmful impacts. We do very rigorous testing, and if there's any doubt at all, we would not proceed. So there are lots and lots of safeguards in place, and we do this work with the utmost care.
Fantastic. And like all the programs, there are international best practices used throughout. You know, you may see on the screen Bradley training the team in Tokelau. What sort of protocols do you use for managing weeds, and in particular managing the use of herbicides when you're controlling environmental weeds?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Well, obviously using agrochemicals are a hazardous substance. There's a lot of thinking that goes into just making decisions around what products are going to be used. And often the people who are actually using them are the benefactors of that knowledge. But both you and I know that through our long history of working with agrochemicals, we've worked through an extensive process of looking at all of the different products available, and to the point where we're selecting products for people to use in the Pacific that have been assessed to a high degree in terms of their effectiveness on the target, but also their safety for people to use and safety on the environment, safety in terrestrial environments, also safety in aquatic environments. So by the time that we're promoting these products for use, all that analysis has been already done. So a lot of the issues around that have already been taken away through that analysis, through our specialist knowledge and experience of working with these products. Alongside that, there's the use of appropriate personal protective equipment. A lot of the assessments that are done around the products themselves are based on interactions with them in their concentrated forms. Obviously, we're diluting those down to a high degree, which also reduces the risks associated with those.
Yeah, so just reducing the risk and then protecting yourself and the environment when needed.
That's right.
So the important thing is, I guess, you know, if you look up things on the internet, you can find anything on the internet which may say a particular herbicide is really bad, but really what we have to do at the end of the day is stick to international protocols and procedures. We have to have faith in science and not take on some crazy things that you see on Facebook and the internet, because it's all out there. A lot of people have ulterior motives. So we try and be very clear in all our processes, and we know exactly where we stand when we're suggesting to use something. Richard, I know it's a big discussion, but there are a few risks involved in managing rats. Would you be able to maybe just give us a couple of ways how you manage the impacts from a rodent control program?
Sure, Dave. Yeah, Bradley just outlined pretty generic safety assessments and risk protocols, which we apply also in the invasive species eradication field. For rats, to remove them from anything but the smallest of islands, we need to use rodent bait containing a rodenticide. That rodenticide is relatively target specific, but not completely. And we always, before undertaking any project, want to undertake a risk assessment to ensure that, first of all, people are safe, and thereafter the environment. And there are plenty of examples and precedents for undertaking rodent eradications on both uninhabited and inhabited islands safely, with no long-term negative consequences for the environment or for people.
Thank you, Richard. So the poll at the moment, as far as who has a health and safety plan, we have 71.4% who do not have a formal health and safety policy and plan. So this is something that we're certainly putting forward in all our activities, particularly with the prisms. It's a very important aspect. What about the digital applications you prefer for communications? What's winning there? Look at Facebook, 36.4.
And email, 40.
Email's very high, 45.5.
Nobody using Twitter, that's interesting.
Yes, no one's using Twitter, no one's using Viber, and no one's using WhatsApp. So Messenger and Instagram coming in at 9.1% each. That's interesting. What about the other, the last poll, Dominic? Do invasive species impact men and women differently? Yes, say 77.8%. That's a fairly clear indicator that that's an important issue to be constantly thinking about and looking into when you're managing invasive species. It's actually just gone up to 80%. We're almost out of time. We've got about 5 minutes, so let's just do a quick fire, rapid question around all our guests today. The first question I have for you all is, what do you think is the worst invasive species? And I know everyone's going to focus on their little things, but that's all right. Let's have a quick fire around the room. Joseph, what do you think is the worst invasive species?
From my background, working with invasive species management, controlling them, I think that weeds are a major problem to our forests, because forest provides a lot for our livelihoods, and once invasive weeds take over those places, then there's a lot more impacts than the eye can see. So I think weeds is.
Have you got a good example from Samoa? What do you think is the worst weed in Samoa?
At the moment, the African tulip tree is becoming a really widespread weed in the country. So it's something that we might want to focus on.
Yes, and there is a natural enemy available for that now in the Pacific. Lily, what do you think is the worst invasive species in the Pacific?
Well, if I'm just going to stick with weeds as well, because that's my area, I think the most frightening weed I have seen is the taro vine, which is currently a big problem in Niue, but it's present in many Pacific Island countries, hasn't got as bad there yet. So the Latin name of that is Epipremnum aureum cultivar pinnatum. That is the most scary weed I've seen.
Yes, that is very bad. I mean, I've watched that spread over my years in Niue. And it is a plant that is loved around the Pacific. We see it and printed on materials used for all sorts of things. And everyone loves it. But a lot of countries haven't realized the problem that it can become. It hasn't quite reached that stage in countries. So it's a very important one. I know, Richard, what do you think the worst invasive species is?
Perhaps I'm biased, David, but rats, without a doubt. Rats have contributed to the forest changes in forest composition, loss of biodiversity, impacting our crops, you name it. And probably cats would come a close second, given the number of species that they've caused to go extinct.
Yes, the amount of impact that those species have is huge. We're actually near the end of time on the session. I'm not sure if we can run over a few minutes or not.
Can I just interrupt, because I'm going to say that the worst invasive species is the one you haven't prepared for and the one you don't expect, and that's why you need to have biosecurity.
Such a smart answer. Monica, thank you. For me, all invasive species are important. I lead the Resilient Ecosystem, Resilient Community Technical Program, and I haven't focused on that today, mainly because it involves a bit of everything what everyone else does and requires a lot more work with the community. So I hate all invasive species. Despite what my wife says, she says I'm not allowed to hate cats and things like that, but we all have to deal with that. And I'm glad that, Richard, you gave us how you educate your, how you've educated your kids. I think that's something we need to think about. So we're out of time, but it's been fantastic to be here for the first session. I'd like to very much thank all our guests for coming in here and sharing us our stories today. Once again, I would love to congratulate Huggett yet again on Battler of the Year, and I'd like to thank my team here for the technical support and Verison. Thank you very much.
Hello, Dave.
Thanks, everyone. See you again sometime in the lounge.
In a couple of hours.
2 o'clock.